Umper and Chocta Eamon O'Cuiv.
Well, with that very upbeat assessment of where we're going, and as you know, I totally concur with you. My question is, the money that's been available for Greenways from Athenry to Collooney, will there be an instruction given that it cannot be done at the risk of destroying existing infrastructure that could be used for rail in the future? And I think we need clarification on this issue. We all support Greenways, but we don't support Greenways that destroy one thing to give you another.
63 million has been allocated by my department to TII this year for the delivery of its Greenway programme, and of this 4.65 million has been allocated to Galway County Council and 790,000 to Sligo County Council for Greenway projects under their remit. 2 TII-funded greenways are currently being progressed between Athenry and Collooney. 400,000 has been allocated this year for the progression of the Charleston to Collooney section of the Sligo Greenway through Phase 1, concept and feasibility, and Phase 2, option selection of the TII project management guidelines. In addition, 300,000 has been allocated to appoint consultants to progress the Athenry and Milltown Greenway through Phase 2, which is option selection. The option selection process for both projects will have due regard to all options considered reasonable between Charleston, Balahy and Collooney, and between Athenry and Milltown, and will also have regard to the outcome of the strategic rail review, in particular the proposals for the potential reopening of the Western Rail Corridor. As the Deputy will be aware, that strategic rail review has been undertaken in cooperation with the Department of Infrastructure in Northern Ireland, and it will inform the development of the railway sector on the island of Ireland over the coming decades. It is at an advanced stage. Publication of the final report will follow after it has been considered and approved at ministerial level here and in Northern Ireland. Any affected potential greenways will be given due consideration. It should be noted that in some instances it may be feasible to run a greenway alongside a rail line. While this may be more costly, if an economic case is made, it may allow for the provision of both services. So to answer your question directly, nothing will be done which threatens or undermines the ability for us to reopen a rail line. We will look at options, including a variety of different options, such as running alongside. Nothing will be done which would rule out the rail option in what we do on the Greenway.
So, following the process, do I take it, number one, that nothing will be done ahead of the rail review being published and decisions being made on it? And number two, that when the options paper or the options are put forward by TII, am I correct in saying that they're obligated to provide 5 options on each route and then go to public consultation and outline the merits and demerits in terms of cost, environment and so on of the 5 options? And could you clarify the process, because I think the process is absolutely key here. And I think if the options are made available and there are 5, I have no doubt that people will make their voices democratically known, that that are not opposed to the idea of the parallel services of Greenway and Railway, but they would be very opposed to one destroying the other.
I'm not aware of what the exact number of those options are. It may be 5, as you suggest, but it certainly is a range of different options, including running alongside a rail line, including greenfield, other in terms of routes. And yes, any such process obviously does go through public consultation process. So we will, and I think the timing here can be, can be fortuitous, but fundamentally what I see happening is the strategic rail review coming before any further decision, any major investment, obviously. That I expect, if we get Northern Ireland Assembly return, certainly, I expect within a very short period that will be one of the first items on the agenda, because we need speed, in my mind, on making decisions on the likes of the Western Rail Corridor, so that every business along the route knows this is the route we're taking, this is the way we're going. So when we make freight decisions or other decisions, housing development decisions, they know exactly what's happening, particularly on that section from Athenry to Claremorris. That comes first. That decision, in my mind, comes first. And once that decision is made, it will give greater clarity for all the other investments in greenways and elsewhere.
Minister, I think a lot of people now accept with the new figures we got that it's likely that Athenry to Claremorris will proceed. In relation to the section from Claremorris to Collooney, can I ask you, would this be considered in view of the fact that it would give a connection within a 10-minute bus ride to Knock Airport from Charlestown? And that furthermore, if that section was completed and it's there, so it only has to be reopened, that it would give you the longest freight line on the island, the whole way from Sligo. And you rightly keep mentioning Ballina, but Sligo has huge potential for rail. If you take South County Donegal and all the timber and everything that's there, running the whole way down and into Rosslare when you reopen the Waterford to Rosslare line. And that would give you an extraordinary reach within the country for freight, right into, as I said, Donegal. So, Minister, can you confirm to me today that in a brave move for the North West, you would seriously give consideration to completing the project and going to Collooney and being done with shilly-shallying around with it and go for balanced regional development in both freight and passenger?
I absolutely agree on the need for balanced regional development, particularly for the North West and particularly for the lack of connectivity to Donegal. Sligo does have a rail service, but Donegal doesn't, and Donegal suffers from a lack of, from that, or has for decades. We will, however, there are certain limited resources, real limits, and it's very expensive. The Charleston to Collooney, effectively you'd almost have to build a new line. Very little of the existing line is reclaimed. And there is another investment proposal which I believe should get priority, which is a rail line running from Portadown west through via Dungannon, Omagh, Strabane, Letterkenny and Derry. That, in my mind, would have huge benefits in terms of all the towns along that route and for Letterkenny and connecting Letterkenny to Derry, which is a critical investment priority in my mind. That, rather than spending, which would be a very significant sum on the Charleston, Collooney, Sligo and up to Donegal, that route, perhaps sometime in the future when we see the complete revival of rail, but I don't expect to see that recommended. I think we should concentrate on the other line, which would be very expensive, which would be real benefits, and focus on the section from Athenry, Claremorris and from Rosslare to Waterford, and building new services along that entire line.
The whole railway line is maintained, and we cleaned that in the north. It's all there.
Just fáilte críú don na daltaí scolas ús